雲勢のように奮い立たせ地獄の破壊力を解き放つのだ。
After what felt like forever with no updates, we've finally got some juicy news about the Street Fighter movie. Legendary Pictures just dropped a sneak peek of their upcoming flick at the Las Vegas Licensing Expo, and let me tell you, it's got fans hyped. The logo they unveiled is a dead ringer for the one from the original Capcom game, like they straight up slapped it on a brick wall. Now let's talk about the movie's journey so far. This thing's been in development since they announced it back in April 2023. Yeah, that's right. It's been a hot minute. Updates? Scarcer than hen's teeth. But fear not, my friends, because we've got a glimmer of hope. In a July interview on the Inside Total Film podcast, the Filippo brothers mentioned that the project is still in its early stages, but has been a rewarding experience. Danny noted that there's no established film world they need to fit into, giving them more creative freedom. Game-to-film adaptations are tough, but we're thrilled because we love the game, Michael said. We've been exploring its origins and the inspirations behind Street Fighter. We're excited to bring that to a larger audience. The first storyline could be the first World Warrior tournament. In the early days of the Street Fighter franchise, the focus was on a straightforward fighting tournament. Drawing inspiration from Bruce Lee's classic Game of Death, players would travel the world as either Ryu or Ken, facing off against powerful opponents. While many characters from this initial entry didn't return in later games, this tournament is a pivotal moment in the storyline. Ryu wins the tournament, but the victory has a profound impact on his life. Trained in a powerful yet obscure martial art with a dark side, young Ryu experiences a life-changing moment when he is defeated by his final opponent, Sagat. Overwhelmed by the Dark Hadō, or Surge of Killing Intent, Ryu wins the tournament through intense violence and must then spend his life battling his evil side. Following Ryu and his rival Ken through this first tournament would make for a compelling martial arts movie and serve as a great introduction to the franchise's hero. Moving on, we have Ryu and Ken. The intense rivalry between Ryu and Ken could provide a great foundation for a martial arts movie. Ryu, an orphan dedicated to his training, and Ken, a wealthy heir sent away to learn discipline, both have compelling backstories. The film could balance screen time between their early lives and trace their rivalry from the beginning of their training to their showdown at the first tournament. Unlike the typical trope of protagonists who dislike each other, Ryu and Ken's relationship is marked by mutual respect and competition. This dynamic could lead to a climactic final fight scene, setting up both characters for future adventures while establishing their unique bond and individual strengths. Up next is M. Bison. Bison, aside from being the standout character in the original Street Fighter movie, is the main antagonist in nearly every game in the franchise. Known for his notoriously difficult moveset, his backstory is fascinating and chaotic. Starting the movie franchise with Bison as the focus would be a bold and unique approach. Bison was born into a small community that taught him to harness a mystical energy called soul power. He discovered his soul was split between good and evil, and he chose to purge all the goodness from himself, resulting in the creation of Rose. With his criminal empire, Bison aimed to save the world by force, making him a sort of domestic Thanos. This complex and ambitious character could serve as an excellent protagonist for a Street Fighter movie. Centering the story on Bison, or telling it from Rose's perspective, would provide a fresh and intriguing start to the franchise. And at last, we have the second World Warrior tournament. This approach is likely the one the film will ultimately take. Most of the iconic characters and main antagonists, along with the Dark Hadō subplot, were properly introduced in the second game. Starting the film franchise here would make sense, as it allows for the introduction of the classic World Warriors and the four Grandmasters. Ryu's battle with Sagat and his upbringing with Ken could be covered through flashbacks. While keeping the plot entirely intact might be difficult due to its complexity and vast backstory, there are ways to streamline it effectively. The Street Fighter movie has the potential to go in many interesting directions, and the games offer plenty of source material to build a compelling new franchise. Now, let's discuss how both Street Fighter live-action movies hold up. The first live-action Street Fighter movie makes some pretty weird choices as an adaptation. It's kind of based on Street Fighter II, The World Warrior, but it leaves out a bunch of important stuff. Instead of focusing on Ryu or Ken, the usual main characters, it puts the spotlight on United States Air Force Major Guile, who's about as American as they come. Naturally, the movie takes some liberties with the lore. They ditch almost all the supernatural stuff, which gives the story this weird vibe. It's like they shuffled the characters around randomly, so you've got familiar names attached to totally unrecognizable faces. But hey, that was the norm back then. The movie was mostly a showcase for Jean-Claude Van Damme, but it's got enough oddball choices to stand out. So the story follows Guile as he gets a crew together to take down this drug lord turned warlord named M. Bison. Ryu and Ken end up getting roped into Guile's mission against Bison's country, Shadaloo, because they're American con artists. Chun-Li's in there too, playing a tough reporter out for revenge against Bison for her dad's murder. And you've got characters like Zangief, Balrog, E. Honda, DJ, and even Dhalsim doing their thing for Bison's evil empire. The plot isn't exactly rocket science, but there are enough strange details to make it stick in your brain. The action scenes are pretty goofy, more like something out of Power Rangers than a serious martial arts flick. And don't get me started on some of the dialogue, it's downright bizarre, but there are a couple of lines that'll stay with you forever. Calling Street Fighter a good movie is a stretch, but it's definitely got its charm. All its flaws just make it more endearing. The one shining beacon of awesomeness in the whole thing is Raul Julia's performance as M. Bison. He took on the role as a tribute to his kids, who were big Street Fighter fans, and he totally nails it. Seriously, he steals the show and probably goes down as the most iconic video game movie character ever. And amidst all the silliness, there are moments where the humor really lands. Sure, nobody else seems to be taking Street Fighter seriously, which might bug some fans, but it makes for a fun ride. It's one of those movies that's so bad it's good, and it's earned its cult classic status for sure. Now, the sequel, Legend of Chun-Li, that's a whole different story, and not in a good way. While the 90s flick is a blast, Legend of Chun-Li is a total train wreck. It's like they took all the fun out of Street Fighter and replaced it with something straight out of a bad action movie. Instead of drawing inspiration from cool stuff like Star Wars or James Bond, they went full Transformers, and not in a good way. The movie's supposed to be about Chun-Li seeking revenge on M. Bison, but honestly, it's just a mess. The story's all over the place, the writing's terrible, and none of the characters have any of the charm you'd expect. They're like generic extras from some forgettable cop show. The long story short, Legend of Chun-Li is a total dud, and it proves that stripping away all the fun from a game adaptation is a surefire way to flop. With a third Street Fighter movie on the horizon, hopefully they've learned some lessons from the first two. The '94 flick might be a mess, but at least it's willing to embrace the craziness of the games. Legend of Chun-Li, on the other hand, is just a generic disaster that misses the mark completely. Fans would take another Street Fighter over another Chun-Li any day, but ideally, the new one should aim for the sweet spot of being both wild and true to the games. Well, that's it for today. What are your thoughts on the direction the new Street Fighter movie is taking? Are you excited about the potential storylines, or do you have reservations based on past adaptations? Let us know in the comments below. And if you enjoyed today's content, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to our channel for more updates on all things Street Fighter and beyond. Until next time, keep gaming and stay tuned for more exciting news and discussions.